Have you ever stopped to think why some people fall into the heaviest addictions while others never even come close? Why were you chosen to go through all that suffering? Carl Jung discovered something shocking. Devastating addictions don't happen by chance. They are callings. They are signs that you were selected for a transformation that most people will never experience. If you're watching this video right now, it's not by accident. Something inside you knows this. That addiction that almost destroyed your life had a hidden purpose. What if that drug, that destructive behavior, was the only way for you to discover who you really are? Jung spent years studying this. He saw that only some people go through the complete destruction of addiction, and these same people, when they survive, gain powers that others will never have. What you're about to discover here will change everything about what you think of your past. There's a specific type of person who gets chosen for addiction, and you probably recognize yourself in this. From a very young age, you felt something was missing. Not just wanting more toys or more attention, something deeper, something you couldn't name or explain to anyone because they wouldn't understand. Most people go through life feeling generally okay. They find small pleasures, small goals, and those things are enough. They eat, they work, they watch their shows, they sleep. The cycle repeats, and they're fine with it. But you were never fine with it. There was always this gnawing feeling inside that life had to be more than this. Jung called this the search for the self with a capital S. It's not about finding happiness or success in the normal way. It's about finding something so real, so true, that everything else feels fake in comparison. And here's what he discovered. People with this hunger are rare. They're the ones who can't just accept the surface of things. They need to go deeper, even if it kills them. This is where the trap begins. You start looking for that something in all the wrong places. You try relationships, but even the best ones leave you feeling empty after a while. You try success, money, status, and sure, they feel good for a moment. But then the hunger comes back, stronger than before. Nothing fills it. Nothing even comes close. Then one day, you find the substance. Or maybe it finds you, and for the first time in your entire life, that hole inside you feels filled. The noise in your head goes quiet. The constant searching stops. You finally feel complete. This is what you've been looking for your whole life. This is it. But Jung knew something crucial. That feeling of completion is real, but it's pointing you in the wrong direction. The substance isn't the answer. It's a mirror. It's showing you that the thing you're looking for actually exists. You're not crazy for feeling that hunger. You're not broken for never being satisfied with normal life. You were right all along. There is something more. The problem is that the substance is lying to you. It's giving you a fake version of what you're really searching for. It's like someone showing you a photograph of water when you're dying of thirst. The water is real. Your thirst is real. But the photograph can't save you. And the more you try to drink from that photograph, the thirstier you become. This is why your addiction got so bad so fast. You weren't like other users who could take it or leave it. You needed it in a way they never did, because you weren't just using it to feel good or escape problems. You were using it to fill a spiritual hole that's been there since birth. You were trying to use a chemical to solve a problem of the soul. Most people never understand this. They think addiction is about weak willpower or bad choices or trauma, and sure, those things can be part of it. But Jung saw deeper. He saw that the most intense addictions happen to people who are actually searching for God, searching for meaning, searching for their true self. They just don't know it yet, so they search in bottles, in pills, in powders, in anything that promises to make them feel whole. Your hunger was never the problem. Your hunger was the sign that you were chosen for something bigger. The addiction was just the wrong answer to the right question. And that question is, who am I really, and why am I here? Most people never even ask that question. They're too comfortable, too satisfied with the shallow life. but you couldn't stop asking it, even when you didn't have the words for it. The substance became your false god. You worshipped it. You organized your entire life around it. You sacrificed everything for it. And in a twisted way, that devotion was practice. You were learning how to give yourself completely to something. You were learning the intensity of true seeking. You just hadn't found the real thing to seek yet. This hunger that led you into addiction is the same hunger that will lead you out of it and into awakening. But first, you had to learn what doesn't work. You had to try the fake version so you could recognize the real version when it finally shows up. This is why you were chosen, because only someone with this level of hunger has the drive to go all the way through the darkness and come out the other side transformed. Everything you thought you were had to die. There's no gentle way to say this. The person you believed yourself to be, the identity you built, the story you told yourself about who you are, it all had to crumble. And addiction is one of the most efficient tools the universe has for making that happen. Before the addiction took over completely, you had an image of yourself. Maybe you were the smart one, the funny one, the responsible one, the talented one. You had plans, you had dreams, you had people who believed in you, you believed in yourself, you thought you knew where your life was going and who you would become. Then the substance started taking pieces of that image away. At first, small pieces. You missed a few commitments, you let some people down. You made excuses that you actually believed. You told yourself you still had control, that you were still that person you always thought you were. Just going through a rough patch, just having some fun, just dealing with stress in your own way. But the substance had other plans. It started taking bigger pieces. Your job, maybe, your relationships, your savings, your health, your dignity. One by one, everything that you used to prove to yourself and others that you were somebody got stripped away. And you fought like hell to hold on to those pieces because they were your identity. Without them, who were you? Jung understood something that most people never grasp. The ego, that sense of who you think you are, is not your true self. It's a mask. It's a collection of stories and beliefs and roles that you've picked up along the way. Some of it came from your parents, some from society, some from your own experiences and choices. But none of it is really you. It's just a costume you've been wearing for so long that you forgot it's a costume. For most people, that costume stays on their whole life. They die never knowing who they really are underneath it. They spend decades defending and maintaining an image that was never real to begin with. They play their role until the end, and there's nothing wrong with that for them. But you were chosen for a different path. The addiction forced you to watch your costume get destroyed. Every time you did something that went against your values, that was a piece of the costume tearing. Every time you broke a promise to yourself or someone else, another piece gone. Every time you looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the person looking back, that was the costume dissolving. This process is brutal. It feels like death because, in a way, it is death. The death of who you thought you were. And you can't skip this part. You can't go around it. The false self has to die before the true self can emerge. This is what Jung called the mortificatio, the necessary death that comes before rebirth. You probably hit a point where you had lost so much that there was nothing left to lose, no more image to protect, no more reputation to maintain, no more story about yourself that made any sense. You were stripped down to nothing. Just a raw, broken human being with no identity left except addict, and even that word felt too big for what you had become. You were less than that. You were nothing. This is the moment Jung was talking about. This is the point where the real work can finally begin. Because as long as you're still clinging to some idea of who you should be, as long as you're still trying to maintain some image, you can't meet your true self. Your true self only shows up when there's space for it. And addiction cleared out that space by force. Think about it. The substance took away your ability to pretend. It took away your defenses. It took away all the clever ways you had of avoiding the truth about yourself. It cornered you. It backed you into a place where you had no choice but to face what was really there when all the layers got peeled away. Most people never get forced into this corner. They maintain their illusions until the day they die. They never have to face the raw truth of their being. But you didn't get that option. You were chosen to have your illusions shattered. And yes, it was painful beyond words. Yes, it felt like torture. But it was necessary. The ego doesn't give up easily. It fights to survive. It will make deals, create new stories, find new ways to maintain control. This is why so many people relapse over and over. They get clean from the substance, but they immediately start rebuilding the same old ego, the same old false self. They think recovery means going back to who they were before. But that's not what this is about. What comes next is learning to live without that old costume. Learning to exist as something more real than the person you used to pretend to be. And that leads directly into the next part of this journey, where you have to face everything that was hiding underneath that false self all along. Before we move on, I want to show you this. If you want to delve deeper and integrate your shadows and lights, check out the Sim Method ebook. It's a concise guide that can help you unlock your inner power in just 5 minutes a day. The link is in the first pinned comment below. When everything you thought you were falls apart, something strange starts happening. You begin noticing parts of yourself that were always there, but you never wanted to see. The anger you always pushed down, the fear you pretended didn't exist, the shame you buried so deep you forgot it was there, the jealousy, the rage, the desperate neediness, the cruel thoughts you never admitted to anyone, not even yourself. Jung spent his whole career studying these hidden parts. He called them the shadow. And here's what makes this important for you. Everyone has a shadow, but most people never meet theirs. They keep it locked away in the basement of their mind, pretending it doesn't exist. They show the world only the acceptable parts, the parts that get approval and love and success. But addiction doesn't let you hide anymore. When you're deep in it, all those locked doors start opening. The things you never wanted to face come flooding out. You do things you swore you'd never do. You become someone you promised yourself you'd never be, and you can't pretend anymore that those dark parts aren't part of you, because there they are, acting through you, making choices, taking control. This is terrifying at first. You watch yourself lie to people you love. You watch yourself steal, manipulate, betray. You watch yourself choose the substance over everything and everyone that matters. And the voice in your head keeps saying, "This isn't me. This isn't who I really am." But Jung would tell you, yes, it is. It's a part of you that's been there all along. You just never had to look at it before. Most people go their whole lives without this confrontation. They keep their shadow locked up by staying in control, following the rules, maintaining their image. But you lost that control. The addiction broke down the walls and everything came spilling out. All the darkness you inherited, all the pain you suppressed, all the twisted parts of being human that nobody wants to talk about. Here's where it gets interesting. Meeting your shadow isn't punishment. It's initiation. You can't become whole without knowing all of who you are. You can't integrate the light without acknowledging the dark. And most people never get whole because they never do this work. They stay fragmented their entire lives, always running from the parts of themselves they're afraid of. You didn't get that choice. The addiction dragged you into the basement and forced you to meet everything living down there. And yes, some of it was horrible. Some of it made you want to die rather than accept it as part of yourself. But this meeting was necessary. You had to see it all. You had to know what you're capable of, both the worst and eventually the best. There's a reason Jung said that people don't have insights. They have breakdowns first. You can't have a real insight into your nature while you're still pretending to be someone you're not. The pretending has to break first. The nice story you tell about yourself has to shatter. Then, in the wreckage, you start seeing what's actually true. Your shadow contains more than just the bad stuff, though. That's what most people don't understand. Yes, there's rage and selfishness and all the things you're ashamed of, but there's also power you never claimed, strength you never used, wildness you tamed too early, desires you were taught to suppress, gifts you were told weren't acceptable. The addiction brought all of it to the surface, and while you were busy hating yourself for the dark parts, you probably missed the fact that you were also becoming more real, more honest, more raw, less fake. You couldn't hide behind politeness anymore. You couldn't perform normalcy. You were just you in all your broken, messy, complicated humanity. This is what Jung meant when he said that neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering. Most people avoid their shadow through all kinds of neurotic behaviors. They stay busy, they stay distracted, they stay shallow. But you were forced into legitimate suffering. You had to feel it all. You had to face it all. And that suffering, as brutal as it was more real than anything you'd felt before. The conversations with your shadow don't end when you get clean. They're just beginning. Because now you have to decide what to do with everything you discovered. You can't unknow what you learned about yourself. You can't pretend those parts don't exist anymore. You have to find a way to integrate them, to make peace with them, to accept that yes, this is also who you are. This integration is the real work of recovery, and it's what separates people who just get clean from people who actually transform. Getting clean is stopping the substance. Transformation is becoming whole, and you can't become whole by rejecting the parts of yourself you don't like. You have to bring them into the light, understand them, and find a way to live with them. Your shadow knows things your conscious mind doesn't. It has energy your polite self never accessed. It has truth your nice self was afraid to speak. And now that you've met it, now that it's been seen, you have a choice. You can spend your life trying to shove it back in the basement, or you can learn to work with it. You can let it teach you. You can let it make you stronger, more complete, more real. This is why you were chosen for this journey, because you have the capacity to become whole in a way most people never do. You were forced to meet all of yourself, not just the parts that get approval. And if you can learn to accept and integrate what you found, you'll have access to a kind of power and authenticity that people who never face their shadow will never have. After you've lost everything and faced the darkest parts of yourself, you arrive at a place that feels like absolute emptiness. Not the kind of empty where you're sad or lonely. Deeper than that, a void, where nothing means anything anymore. Where all the things that used to matter don't matter. Where you can't find a reason to care about anything at all. This void is one of the most dangerous places in the journey, but it's also the most important. Jung talked about this as the encounter with meaninglessness. It's the place where every story you ever believed about life falls apart. God isn't real. Love isn't real. Purpose isn't real. You're just a biological machine going through motions until you die. Nothing you do makes any difference. Nothing matters at all. A lot of people don't survive this part. They either go back to the addiction to escape it, or they find other ways to not be here anymore. Because sitting in this void, really sitting in it without running, is almost unbearable. Your mind keeps searching for something to grab onto, some meaning, some hope, some reason to keep going. And there's nothing there, just emptiness. But here's what Jung discovered, and this is crucial. The void isn't the end. It's a doorway. It's the space between who you were and who you're becoming. And you have to pass through it. You can't go around it. You can't skip it. You have to sit in that emptiness and let it strip away every last belief, every last hope, every last story, until there's absolutely nothing left. Most people never experience this because they never lose enough to get here. They always have something to hold on to. Some belief system, some relationship, some goal, some identity. These things keep them tethered to meaning, even if that meaning is shallow. But you lost everything, remember? The addiction took it all. So you ended up here, in this void, with nothing to hold on to at all. This is the place mystics talk about. The dark night of the soul, the desert, the abyss. Every spiritual tradition knows about it, because everyone who goes deep enough eventually arrives here. But you didn't choose to come here through meditation, or prayer, or study. You were dragged here by addiction. You were thrown into the void whether you were ready or not. And now you're here, and you have to make a choice. You can try to fill this void with something, anything. New addictions, new distractions, new beliefs that you don't really believe but you pretend to because the emptiness is too much. Or you can stay here. You can sit in this uncomfortable, terrifying nothingness and wait. Wait for what? You don't know. That's the point. If you knew what you were waiting for, you'd still be holding on to something. You'd still be trying to control the outcome. But the void demands complete surrender. It demands that you stop trying to figure it out. Stop trying to make something happen. Stop trying to create meaning. It demands that you just be here, in the emptiness, with no agenda at all. This goes against everything you've ever been taught. Your whole life, you've been told to set goals, make plans, create meaning, find purpose, but the void laughs at all of that. It shows you that all those things were just stories you told yourself to avoid facing the fundamental emptiness at the core of existence. And now you can't tell those stories anymore because you've seen through them. What Jung understood is that this void is actually full. It's full of potential. It's full of everything that could be, but isn't yet. It's the space where transformation happens, but you can't access what's in the void by searching for it or trying to make it happen. You can only access it by becoming empty enough yourself. Think of it like this. When you were full of yourself, full of your stories and beliefs and identity, there was no room for anything new. You were a cup that was already full. But the addiction emptied that cup. It poured out everything you thought you were, everything you believed, everything you held on to. And now you're an empty cup sitting in an empty space. This is the moment something new can pour in, but only if you stay empty. Only if you don't immediately try to fill yourself back up with new stories, new identities, new beliefs. The void is testing you. It's asking, can you handle being nothing? Can you exist without knowing who you are or why you're here or what it all means? Most people can't. They panic. They grab onto the first thing that makes them feel solid again. They need an answer, any answer. They need to feel like someone, like their life has purpose, like they matter. And there's nothing wrong with that for them. But you were chosen for something different. You were chosen to learn how to be comfortable in the void, to exist in the not knowing, to be okay with having no answers, no identity, no solid ground under your feet, because this is where real transformation lives, not in getting new answers, but in learning to exist in the question itself. The void isn't empty, it's full of potential, it's pregnant with everything you're about to become. But that new self can't be born until you stop trying to be your old self. It can't emerge until you stop filling the space with noise and distraction and meaning-making. It needs silence. It needs emptiness. It needs you to get out of the way. This is the portal Jung was talking about. The place where the old you dies completely and something new has space to be born. But you have to trust the process. You have to trust that staying in this uncomfortable void is exactly where you need to be right now. And you have to stop trying to escape it, because escaping it means missing the whole point of why you went through everything you went through. Something happens in that void if you stay long enough. You start to die, not physically, but in every other way that matters. The person you were, the one who started this journey, that person is gone. They're not coming back, and you're not replacing them with a better version. You're becoming something completely different. Jung saw this pattern repeat in every culture, every religion, every mystical tradition throughout history. The hero has to die before they can be reborn. The initiate has to go through symbolic death before they can access new life. The old self has to be destroyed before the true self can emerge. This isn't a metaphor. It's an actual psychological process that you can feel happening inside you. You know you're going through this death when you stop caring about things that used to define you. Old goals that seem so important now feel irrelevant. People you thought you needed to impress don't matter anymore. The future you had planned looks like it belongs to someone else because it does. It belonged to the person you were before, and that person is dying. This death feels different from the collapse we talked about earlier. The collapse was violent, chaotic, destructive. This death is quieter. It's more like watching something fade away. You notice that your old reactions don't happen anymore. Situations that would have triggered you don't touch you now. You're becoming someone who doesn't respond to life the same way. Parts of your personality that seem permanent start dissolving. Maybe you were always the angry one, and suddenly the anger isn't there anymore. Or you were always anxious, and one day you realize the anxiety has been gone for weeks, and you didn't even notice. These aren't small changes. These are fundamental shifts in who you are at your core. The rebirth that follows isn't about becoming who you want to be. It's about discovering who you actually are when all the false layers are gone. And that person is often nothing like what you expected. You might have thought you'd become some perfected version of your old self, all the good parts without the bad. But that's not what happens. What emerges is something raw and original. A self that doesn't fit into the categories you use to understand yourself. You can't describe it using your old vocabulary because your old vocabulary was created by your old self. This new self needs new words, new ways of being, new ways of understanding what it means to be you. People around you notice something's different, but they can't put their finger on what. You look the same, mostly. You sound similar. But there's something about your presence that's changed. You're more solid somehow, more real, less concerned with what they think, less interested in performing or explaining or defending yourself. This is because you died to the need for external validation. That need was part of the old self, the ego that had to maintain an image, but the new self doesn't have an image to maintain. It just is what it is. It exists without needing anyone to confirm or approve or understand it. This freaks some people out. They want you to go back to being who you were before, someone they could predict and control, but you can't go back. Death is permanent, even symbolic death. The person they knew is gone, and you can't pretend to be that person anymore, even to make them comfortable. You've been to places they haven't been. You've seen things they haven't seen. You've died and been reborn. You can't unsee that. You can't unknow what you know now. The rebirth gives you abilities the old you never had. You can see through people's masks because you lost yours. You can handle pain better because you've already been through the worst. You can sit with discomfort because you lived in the void. You can be alone without being lonely because you found something inside yourself that's always there. Jung called this the individuated self. It's not better than other people. It's not special or superior. It's just more complete, more whole, more integrated. You're not rejecting parts of yourself anymore. You're not hiding anything. All of you is present, the light and the dark, the beautiful and the ugly, all of it held together in one coherent being. This wholeness makes you useful in ways you couldn't have been before. Other people who are suffering can feel that you've been where they are. They can sense that you're not speaking from theory or judgment, but from actual experience of the depths. You become a guide, not because you studied the map, but because you walked the territory. The rebirth also gives you a strange kind of freedom. You're no longer attached to outcomes the way you used to be. You can make plans without being controlled by them. You can have goals without your identity depending on achieving them. You can lose things without losing yourself because you already lost everything once and discovered you still existed. This is what Jung meant when he talked about the birth of the true self. Not a perfect self, not a self without problems or pain, but a self that's authentic, integrated, and whole. A self that's been tested in the fire and came through changed. A self that knows who it is because it had to fight to discover that in the darkest possible circumstances. Your addiction was the fire. Your collapse was the death. The void was the tomb. And now you're emerging as something new. Something that couldn't have existed without going through all of that. You were chosen for this transformation. You were selected to make this journey, and now you carry something inside you that most people will never have because they were never willing to die the way you died. Looking back now, you can finally see what was really happening. Every moment of suffering, every loss, every humiliation, every dark night spent in hell, it was all forging you into something specific. The addiction wasn't random. The pain wasn't meaningless. You were being prepared for something that required you to be broken open in exactly the way you were. Jung discovered that people who go through this kind of extreme transformation develop what he called a genius for healing. Not because they studied it or read books about it, but because they lived through the death and rebirth themselves. They know the territory. They know the stages. They know what's real and what's not. And that knowledge becomes a gift they can give to others. The destruction you went through cleared out space inside you. Space for new growth, new understanding, new ways of being. If your life had stayed comfortable and safe, that space never would have opened up. You'd be the same person you were at 20, just older, but the addiction destroyed that possibility. It forced you to become someone completely different. Think about what you can handle now that you couldn't before. The things that used to break you don't anymore. The situations that would have sent you spiraling, you can now move through with ease. You develop strength you never would have needed if life had been kind to you. And that strength is the gift. You also gained something else, something harder to name, a kind of sight. You can see what's real in people now. You can spot the lies they tell themselves. You can recognize the pain they're hiding. This isn't judgment, it's recognition. You see in them what you lived through yourself. The gift also shows up in your relationship with fear. Most people are controlled by fear in ways they don't even recognize. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of loss. But you already experienced all of those things. You already failed completely. You already lost everything. So what's left to be afraid of? This fearlessness isn't reckless. It's calm. It's the fearlessness of someone who knows they can survive anything because they already survived the worst. And this changes how you move through life. You take risks other people won't take. You speak truths other people won't speak. Your addiction was never just about you. It was about what you would become after you survived it. It was about the gift you would carry for others. You were chosen because you had the capacity to go all the way through and come back changed. And now here you are, still standing, still breathing, still growing, carrying inside you something precious that was forged in the fire of your own destruction. That's the gift. That's what was hidden in all that pain. That's why you were selected. Not to be destroyed, but to be remade into something stronger, truer, and more whole than you ever could have been without the journey through hell.